Hello friends, welcome to the MOvi Cap channel. Today I will bring to your attention one of the famous Korean series. The film begins with a high school student named Si-eun, who was the smartest student in his class. He was a withdrawn person who kept himself away from his classmates. He spends a lot of time studying every day, so he had no friends at school. His classmates hated him because he was so smart. Despite his great achievements, no one respected him at school. A classmate named Yeon-bin is widely respected for her homework, but when Si-eun receives an award, no one applauds her for winning first place in a math competition. But Yeon-bin won third place in the math competition and the whole class applauded. He was silent when Yeon-bin made a mess of him in the classroom. There were many students in the class who took Yeon-bin's side, and together they ridiculed Si-eun, accusing her of being helpless compared to the other students and beating down her personality. Yeon-bin tries to intimidate her and is jealous of her for everything because Si-eun beat her in a math competition. Despite the fact that he has no friends now and was a closed student. He's never been afraid of the guys in Yeon-bin's group, he doesn't even care when they threaten him with the whole school. The baseball team comes to their class and they are looking for a student named Suk-ho. They want revenge on Suk-ho who switched their friends, although they try to hit him with baseball bats. Suk-ho manages to defeat them because he was a former MMA fighter. When Suk-ho arrives home, he gives his father the thank you note he earned. His father was proud of him when he saw this, but he was not proud of his father because he feels lonely even when he is with his family. Since her parents' divorce, she lived only with her father. His father was very busy with his work, and his mother was a teacher. He was teaching away from his son. It was difficult for him to see his mother, so he could only watch his mother's videos every day. Due to the conflict between his parents, he grew up alone. The next day, when Si-eun comes to school early as usual, she finds Suk-ho sleeping in class. That day they are in PE class, but Si-eun can't find a tracksuit. He believes that someone stole his tracksuit because Si-eun is forced to wear his uniform in physical form, like young children. Si-eun was a top student in all subjects except PE, where she was not physically good. After PE class, Si-eun confronts Yeon-bin and his group in the education class and asks Yoo-gang to leave her alone. Yeon-bin's group feels humiliated, so when they are trying to choke him out, a teacher suddenly walks in and interrupts them. Yoo-bin and his group stop in front of their teacher and say that they were just joking. In the class was a transfer student named Bum-suk, who transferred from an elite high school. Bum-suk denies that she's from a wealthy family because she doesn't want to join them, and Si-eun approaches them and tells Bum-suk to move from her desk. Enraged at the sight of him, Yeon-bin suddenly grabs a pen to defend himself, thinking he will attack him. Suk-ho yells at Yeon-bin and his group to keep quiet because his sleep was disturbed at night as usual. As usual late at night, a group of kids go to a club and order drugs. They do this every day. Then Yeon-bin meets his cousin who is a drug dealer. Yeon-bin asks him what would happen if the fentanyl he ordered was rubbed on someone's skin. Ride, the drug dealer tells him, causes confusion, dizziness, blurred vision, nausea and vomiting. The next day, the exam was held in the classroom as usual, for which everyone had prepared well. Yeon-bin arrives at school late. He asks Bum-suk to go with him because she says their class teacher wanted to meet him. They go to the school cafeteria, where Yeon-bin Bum shows Suk the fentanyl he brought and demands that he use it on Si-eun during the exam. Bum-suk agrees to do as she says because she is scared. Later, while they're taking the exam, Bum-suk does what Yeon-bin told her to and puts her hand on Si-eun's neck. At first, Si-eun gets a pain in her neck and is angry with her, but after the teacher calls her to keep order, she turns around and solves the exam test questions when her vision suddenly begins to blur. Si-eun struggles to determine the correct answer to the exam questions, and she leaves the classroom to go to the bathroom. When he came back from the bathroom, he realized he had fentanyl around his neck. He gets the attention of the whole class and suddenly starts slapping their cheeks, to the surprise of the whole class. After class, Si-eun slaps her cheek to keep her focused. After they take the exam and share it, they start checking their answers and see that Si-eun has one wrong answer. Frustrated by this, he grabs a pen from his seat and attacks Yeon-bin and his accomplices, and then stabs Yeon-bin's friend with the pen. The young man was covered with blood from his punch. No one in the class would dare to see Si-eun's anger and interfere with it. Suddenly, he wants to press a pen in Yeon-bin's face. However, Suk-ho stops her and pushes her away as she thinks it's too much. Si-eun gets angry with him and grabs a chair to fight him. Unfortunately, Sok-ho manages to avoid his attacks, and suddenly a teacher comes to their class because of that incident. Yun-bin later had to be hospitalized for treatment. Si-eun is called by her teacher to apologize to young Ben. But Yoon-bin's mother scolds him because she was angry with him. Si-eun tells him that she was drugged with fentanyl by Yoon-bin while they were taking the exam. Yoon-bin denies that the fentanyl is his, but his teacher, Si-eun, takes her word for it and searches Yoon-bin's bag. A box of fentanyl and other items are found in her bag. Yoon-bin's mother finally confesses to him for this act, and she is shocked to see that the school authorities have decided to transfer him to another school. Again, they agree to keep the incident of drug use by students a secret in order to maintain their good reputation. When Si-eun comes home from school that day, she doesn't tell her father about what happened at school. His father suspects that the wound on his face was inflicted by children fighting in the classroom. But he doesn't care. His father thinks it's a normal thing that happens between teenagers. The next day, two of Yoon-bin's friends angrily approach Si-eun's place. They ask her to meet after school, but Si-eun is not afraid to meet them alone and she asks them to meet now instead of waiting for school to end. With angry faces, Yoon-bin's friends enter the bathroom, before Si-eun closes the bathroom door so no one can see. They didn't realize that Si-eun had brought her favorite weapon, a pen. They gradually become afraid of him as he steps towards them. They remember the incident when Si-eun got out of control. They can't move their bodies as they remember it. It seems that Si-eun doesn't want to attack them. That's all he told them. "Leave me alone as soon as I get out of the bathroom." All his classmates praise him for defeating them. The others get angry at Yoon-bin and his group because suddenly they've been friendly to him all this time. His classmates, who didn't even look at him before, are now like butterflies around him. Meanwhile, Yoon-bin's cousin visits him. He then warns the young man that young people tend to overdo everything. He then promises to pay his cousin handsomely if he is willing to do as he says, saying that he will soon be on his feet. As Si-eun walks home at night, she sees Sok-ho working part-time in addition to being a student. After school, he works part-time as a food courier in a restaurant for a living. Since he lost his parents, he lives only with his grandmother. But after he finished work, he doesn't go home. Instead he comes to school and spends the night sleeping here, because if he sleeps at home, he will be late for school. Now that Si-eun knows her story, she no longer wakes him up every morning. Si-eun appreciates his act, so she helps him get more sleep before everyone sees him, and then gets friendly with him. Since then, they grow closer to each other, but Sok-ho is not used to being open with others. At this time in Almata, Yoon-bin meets his cousin, who gave him a loan and was a member of the collection agency that collected Yoon-bin's dad. So he would do any high-paying job after school. Also, Bum-suk tries to apologize to Si-eun when he sees her for what he did at school. Yu blames himself for what happened between them, and Yu offers Si-eun to restore friendly relations, but Si-eun ignores him. He is suddenly interrupted by Yoon-bin and his gang, who suggest that they talk quietly a little further away. Bum-suk sees Si-eun leaving with them and he immediately informs Sok-ho about it. He calms Bum-suk down and doesn't care what she says because it was none of his business. After that, he's supposed to go to work too, but Sok-ho changes his mind after Bum-suk tells him that he'll pay him double. In a quiet place, Yoon-bin's gang was terrorizing Si-eun. Si-eun was always a person who analyzed and calculated her actions. He manages to fight them off, but seeing his bodyguard beaten, Yoon-bin brutally attacks him. He also tries to injure her arm but she can't because Sok-ho suddenly appears there and manages to defeat Yoon-bin and his friends with his skills, but their struggle does not stop there. But when Yoon-bin and his friends see Si-eun alone, they try to beat her up again. She attacks them with her bag. Seeing the situation getting worse, Yoon-bin tries to attack Si-eun with a bottle. He is unable to stop his partner as he continues to attack Sok-ho. At this point, Bum-suk threatens them to call the police because if the police get involved it will only be a big problem for Yoon-bin. They finally decide to let Si-eun and her friends go and leave. Meanwhile, Yoon-bin stood there and realized that he had lost again. Si-eun and the others bond and soon Sok-ho rushes back to work. But because of the events that happened, Si-eun and Bum-suk break into the restaurant where he works. They tell him that they will help him work because they see that Sok-ho has a lot of work and force him to go to work. They spend their nights helping out a friend at that restaurant, But Sok-ho is still not used to seeing them and spending time together as usual. A gang leader called Gil-so, who is deranged by the incident. He did not like his subordinates to take any other work without his orders. Therefore, he punishes him by beating his hand with a stick so that he can be an example to everyone. He then suggests to Yoon Bin that he can use the girl in the gang to turn Si-eun's head. Si-eun is walking in the supermarket and sees Young Yi stealing something. Since he is also from the same gang, Si-eun ignores him and pretends not to see him. Young Yi tries to be friendly with Si-eun when she tries to buy an umbrella. Seeing that it's raining outside, he asks her to go to a restaurant with him temporarily. Seeing that he is lonely, Young Yi chooses to go out with him and Si-eun can't help but accept his offer. He confesses to Si-eun that he has dreamed of being with her since he was young and falls in love with her. He also writes down Si-eun's phone number so he can keep in touch. At this time, the gang leader was collecting payments from a high school student. Gil-so had given money as a long guarantee for his mother's car. Even though he was giving contracts on the car as collateral for the loan, his mother was unable to pay her debt. Gil-so still threatens to kill him and his parents and demands that he pay his debts in 3 days. The next day, Yoon Bin collects things in the classroom. He asks Si-eun to interview him. It turns out that Yoon Bin needs to be a witness on his side to testify in court that he doesn't have any fentanyl or he could be put in youth detention. He tells her that her parents are the only ones who hurt her. So he agrees to go to court with his friends and do whatever he wants in exchange for seeing the witness speak. But Yoon Bin takes them to the parking lot where their friends are because they didn't go to court. Now it appears that Yoon Bin lied and tricked them into bringing Gil-so and his gang to him. Gil-so asks them to pay him $15,000 to cover the damage he caused his guys, because after the previous fight, the guy in his gang didn't have health insurance to cover his sick days, so it cost him. Besides, he broke his arm during his sick days, and they were also to blame for that. He did it to get money from himself and her. Gil-so demands that they repay him for the damages they caused within 3 days. If they fail to do so, they will have to borrow money from him to repay him. Here we could see Gil-so's lying and manipulative abilities. The boys wonder who this bully is. They even threaten to kill them if they refuse to do what they say after seeing that unwanted meeting. Si-eun and her friends were under daily surveillance by Gil-so and his gang. Si-eun wonders what to do and sees Young Yi's number on her phone and calls her. He talks to the girl and says that he will give her important information about the leader of the gang. They finally agree to meet at a restaurant. He tells Si-eun about the people Gil-so killed. Apparently he is a man who will do anything for money, including killing young people. He tells Si-eun that he has to pay the money on time if he doesn't want to be in danger. He also says that Gil-soni is friends with many gangsters, so it would be very difficult for them to escape if he didn't pay his debts. Bum-suk steals his father's watch and sells it, and the 3 days they have to come up with the money to pay it all pass. They gather in the sick room of the school. Bum-suk doesn't tell them that he raised $15,000 by selling his father's watch. Instead he says that he asked his father for the money. Si-eun and Sok-ho didn't believe what he said because they didn't believe that he had a father who was willing to give him so much money. Even though they have the money, they refuse to give it to Gil in order to stay alive and decide to call the police instead. Because yesterday Young Yi told Si-eun important information. Gil-soni was apparently a site that promoted illegal gambling to minors. Youngsters love it because it distributes free $50 bonuses on every account for high school students. Si-eun signed up from a gambling site called Giles when she was young abroad. According to him, the gambling game is a scam and players win a lot of bonuses for the first few games, but after they become addicted, the site owner using his addiction to take his money, he said he would beat abolitionists wherever they were. There, when the players ran out of money, they could kill his gang. He is in debt to his gang and approaches them to lend him money so that he can continue playing on gambling sites. As a result, the players owed them money and could not pay their debts because they had lost all their money in gambling. This was one of the worst child exploitation strategies. When you become addicted to gambling, they lend you money in exchange for valuables such as pawning cars, gold bars, and other valuables to keep you gambling. Si-eun continues to tell them about Gil-so's actions, saying that he keeps the valuables he collects from debtors and money from drug deals in a safe box, and ends by saying that Si-eun will call the police because Si-eun will find him right there with all the evidence inside the box. He wants to be arrested.